Okay, after tariffs and quotas, subsidies here, it is going to be the last trade protection diagram that I'm going to explain. So in the middle of the screen, you can see a very classic subsidy diagram. So you see, the supply curve is shifting to the right, and the gap between the two supply curves, that is your subsidy per unit. Okay, and look, things are looking good here. So when the subsidy is being imposed, so the price is going down from P1 to P2, and the transaction is going up as well from Q1 to Q2. So consumers, they are happy. They spend less price for the goods, and for the producers, they're able to sell more as well. Look, yeah, it's good. But now we just have to put a little more international insight into this diagram to show what is going to happen when the market is open to the world. All right, so let's assume even though the government is imposing subsidy to help the domestic market, but the subsidy is not enough to cover all the costs in order to compete with the world. So let's assume the world is still having a lower price than the price that we have in the domestic market, even when we are receiving the subsidy. That's P2. All right, so let's put the curve. Let's put the world supply curve below P2 and see what will happen. Okay, I'm going to put it here. I call that world supply, and I use PW to represent the world price. Okay, all right, so in this case, okay, we are going to see something very similar to any other international trade cases that we have done. All right, so because now the world price is still lower than your subsidized price. Okay, so in order to compete in this market, in this international market, okay, those domestic producers, they have to follow the importers in order to survive in this market. Otherwise, look, no one is going to buy your goods at P2, right? Okay, so they have to follow and change the price to PW. Okay, so now because of international trade, everyone they are selling at P1. Okay, even after it's being subsidized. Does it make sense? All right. So if that is the case, we can explain this step by step. All right. So when you look at the domestic producers, you know how many they are going to produce when they are open for international trade. Okay. So if you just take a look of the world price, okay, so they are going to sell at Q3 in this case. Okay, but don't forget, because now they are receiving a subsidy, so they are more able to reduce the cost of production. So they are still getting some benefits. Okay, so in this case, look, it's going to benefit to more domestic producers to produce more. Okay, so we should look at another domestic supply curve. So now, because of the subsidy, more producers, they are actually able to survive. So now the domestic production is being increased to Q4 right here. Okay, all right, yeah. And don't forget, every time when we are trying to find out, look, what is the unit price our domestic producer is receiving after subsidy is being imposed, we always have to consider the subsidy per unit as well. Okay, all right. Just because they are selling it at PW, that is not the end of the story. You still have to consider the subsidy per unit that they will receive per unit that they sell to the customers. Okay, so in this case, look, even when we know for the domestic producers now, after receiving the subsidies, they will produce at Q4 at PW, but the actual price that they are going to receive after the subsidies is actually PW plus the unit subsidy, okay, which is here. Okay, let's give it another name. Let's call that PRP. PS. All right, so they are actually receiving at the price of PS in this case. Okay, at the quantity of Q4. Okay, all right, yeah, and look, since the market, they are running at the price of PW, so for the consumers, they will still consume at the quantity of Q5 right here. Okay, just like when you're having free trade, because when the consumers, they see the prices at PW, this is the quantity demanded that they would like to consume. Okay, all right, so here in this diagram, this is the basic structure that you will see if you are trying to explain international trade protection using subsidy. Okay, so now we are going forward to explain, to analyze what will happen to different stakeholders. Okay, so let's go ahead with consumers, the local consumers. Okay, so now because the local consumers, they are consuming it at PW, so when we are trying to find out how much benefit that they can get, of course we want to draw the area of consumer surplus, right? So now, look, the consumer surplus is going to be exactly the same as when you are having free trade, because you are trading it at PW. Okay, all right, you are consuming at PW, so you will have Q5 of the quantity. All right, so we just have to draw the CS from the top here all the way to PW until Q5 right here. Okay, does it make sense? Right? Simple. Yeah. So, what about the producers, the local producers? For the local producers, well, we know, look, originally, this much of the producers, they will survive. Okay, but after the subsidy is being imposed, we know there will be more producers, they are receiving the benefits of lowering the cost of production. So at the end, more producers, they are able to survive in this international competition. And at the end, we know the local production is increasing to Q4. So we know the PS is going to go up by this much. Okay, to Q4. All right, so now we can actually see the area of CS right here, this big triangle, and also PS as well after subsidies is being imposed. Okay, all right, yeah, just like this. And so what now? So now we would like to find the cost of subsidy as well, because at the end we want to see if the society is getting benefits or getting a loss. Okay, so now we need to also consider the subsidy cost. All right, so now we need to find that cost. We know, look, let me use green to show you. We know this distance here, which is the unit subsidy. Okay, and for each unit that the producer is selling, they will receive a unit subsidy. Okay, and they are selling it at Q4. So we know if we multiply this distance here, the unit subsidy, with Q4 as the quantity, okay, then we are able to find the total cost of the subsidy, which is this rectangle right here. All right, okay, yeah, so you can simply use PS minus PW times Q4, which will give you this green rectangle, which is your subsidy cost. Okay, yeah, because we know, when you're using subsidy, you have some opportunity costs. Okay, because now you have to give up to spend that money into different areas like education, healthcare, infrastructure, etc., etc. Okay, so that's a loss to your society actually. Okay, so now if you want to find out if the society is incurring a loss or gain, then you just have to do something very simple. You just have to compare using the extra gain to the cost, then you are able to find out if the society is having a net gain or net loss. Okay, so now you want to look at if there's any extra gain because of the subsidy. All right, so we can look at it from the consumers first. So for the consumers, because they are just consuming the same as they were when there was free trade, so there's nothing changing for consumers. Okay, so there's no extra gain from there. But what about the local producers? For the local producers, we do see some extra gain because of the subsidy. All right, so it's just right here. So let me just highlight it with yellow. Okay, so it is this trapezium right here. Okay, yeah, because when we were having free trade, okay, the triangle below, that was the PS, but now because of the subsidy, you gain that trapezium for your extra PS as well. So now we are certain this trapezium, this yellow trapezium, which is your extra gain. Okay, so this is your extra gain because of the subsidy. Okay, and we know, look, the cost from this subsidy is the green rectangle. Okay, so when we minus the two, all right, when we use the yellow area minus the green area, then we are able to find out if the society is having a net gain or a net loss. All right, so in this case, when you look at the diagram, look, there's a missing part. Okay, and here I'm just gonna use purple, yeah, to show you. Okay, so when you look at the diagram, you see this is the missing part after subtracting the two areas, right? This purple triangle here. Okay, when you look at the diagram, all right, because the extra gain is just smaller than the subsidy cost. So at the end, we know this purple triangle here, that is the deadweight loss. Okay, it's that simple. So now we can conclude this triangle right here is a deadweight loss. Okay, yeah, deadweight loss to the society, because the opportunity cost from the subsidy, and at the same time, because of the subsidy, many more inefficient producers, they were here. Okay, all right, because you were helping the domestic market, so more producers, they are able to survive, but they were not so competitive when there was just free trade. So you are trying to help them artificially, but they were not supposed to be able to survive. Okay, so they were not very efficient to the market. If this is the case, look, that's the deadweight loss. Okay, all right, for sure. But now when you look at the diagram of subsidy compared to the two other trade protection diagram, the deadweight loss here is smaller. Okay, yeah, because you have one missing triangle deadweight loss for this one, which created by the consumers. Because now, because of the subsidy, the consumer, they are consuming the same amount of goods at the same price as they were when there was just free trade. So compared to the two other trade protection, you will not find the right triangle on the right hand side. Okay, all right. So that's that's why some economists, they would prefer using subsidy, because less deadweight loss to the society, which is good because it's less inefficient. All right, this makes sense. Okay, so this is basically the diagram. Okay, so before we end this video, I'm just gonna quickly show you the areas that you should focus on. So after subsidy, we know that, look, this is the domestic production, which is Q4. Okay, and after that, then the importers, they will take it over. So after the domestic production, it will become the imports. All right. So as long as you know those ideas, you are able to calculate different other areas. Okay, simple. All right. And yeah, so the consumers, they're going to consume at PW, and for the importers, they're also selling the goods at PW. Only the domestic producers, they are actually receiving the unit price at PS because of the subsidy. All right. Yeah, so that's all for this video here. I hope after watching the other 3 videos, you have better understanding on the international trade diagrams. And if you have any other questions, feel free to put some comments on on the comment section below, or just ask your subject teacher. All right, so enjoy drawing your diagrams.